Welcome to this lesson. Andre and our staff have combed through our best lectures, speeches, and presentations to bring you today's principle. As you watch these lessons, keep in mind how you might best apply the morals, wisdom, and principles in your ordinary daily activities. We know that what we practice and support with intention, we can improve on. Leadership and diversity advocacy requires that we practice both mentally and in the demonstration of our values. Take this time to reflect on your behaviors, build on your strengths, and minimize your areas of weakness. Remember, we look forward to seeing who you become. Andre and our team at AM Horizons will start you on this journey now.
This is just my family and all this kind of stuff. And the only thing I like to point out is that, well, this is me as a little baby. Aren't I cute? This is us in the 70s. This is our Easter photo. Many of you aren't old enough to remember, but there was this company called Olin Mills, and we would go every Easter to get our Olin Mills pictures, right? Okay, cool. And I don't know if you noticed, but my bow tie is as big as my head. Anybody notice that? Right? And then this is my family in our Cosby years. You know, if you look close, you can see Vanessa and Theo, right? And then this is me in my teen years, and here I'm holding a double-barrel sawed-off shotgun, which context is everything, right? So we were at a concert taking pictures, and the name of the band was Public Enemy. So that's why I'm holding a gun, because I'm a public enemy. Long story. And then this is my grandparents, and that's my dad and my two uncles. And I like sharing this just a little bit because there's a lot of stuff, there's a lot of background happening in a number of these photos. And this one in particular I think is very interesting because my parents married very young. They were 19 and had me by the time they were 19. So, no, actually they were 20 and I was born. So here's our family secret, right? So we don't talk about this. So my father's a pastor, right? So all growing up, sex before marriage was wrong. But this is our family secret. My parents were married in June. I was born in October. The math didn't quite work out, right? And so they were married real young and, didn't have a lot of stuff. And they were what most folks would consider in poverty, right? So they were below the poverty line. So I went to this place called Head Start, which was supposed to give underprivileged kids a leg up and help them get started so they can be on par with all of their stuff. And as a part of that, the interesting thing about the bow tie and the vest kind of thing, kind of tunic with straps, was that my mom made those. And she made them because we were poor. We were in poverty. Right? We were below the poverty line. So there were certain things that I was supposed to do and not supposed to do, and ways I'm supposed to be and wasn't supposed to be because of how we were brought up in poverty. But I have to tell you, we may have not had a lot of money, but we were never poor. We were always clean. We always had good manners. My parents did the best they could to get us into the best educational institutions that their little money could afford. And so, although we can have the facts say that there's only so much money coming in. The facts say that we live in this kind of neighborhood. The facts say that our demographics will show up like this. The facts do not equal the truth. And so when we work with our students, it's important that we understand that the facts that they're facing are not determination or do not determine what their truths are. We say facts are how things are, right? That's what we typically say. But the facts have a lot to do with who's telling them. The discovery of America. 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. Right? That's the story we tell, right? What story might the Native Americans tell? The facts, right? When I was growing up, we had 9 planets in the solar system. Now what? How many planets in the solar system? 8. Why? Pluto was demoted. Poor little Pluto. The facts. So the facts are one thing, but the truth is what we get to determine what that is. All right? So we didn't have a lot of money, but we were never poor. And part of the reason that we were never poor was because our parents did their best to make sure that we understood that we had dignity and we were to be honored for being human. What is dignity? What is dignity?
Respect for yourself.
Respect for yourself. Okay. Dignity.
That sense of value that people are looking for.
That sense of value that people are looking for. Okay. Dignity. Is dignity something that I have or something that I can give? Do I import it or do I export it? It is in fact both, right? So it's both. And the interesting thing about dignity is that if you don't give people dignity, they'll try and take it. For example, I don't know if this happens to you, it happens to me quite often, where I'm at a stoplight or a stop sign, and there's a group of teens trying to cross the street, and with their beauty and their youth, you would think that they could cross faster than they do. You ever notice that? And every so often it happens where they're just kind of strolling, and then they make eyeball to eyeball contact with me. And as if to say, your kind, adults, don't see me any other time, but you will see me right now. They're just taking a little time. What they don't know is I have no points on my license and really good car insurance. Right? So dignity, if you don't give it to people, they will try to take it. And what does honor mean? What is honor? Who are we to honor in our society?
Our elders.
Our elders, right? So the people who have come before us, who've done things for us that we possibly couldn't do for ourselves, right? So we honor our elders. Who else are we supposed to honor in our society?
Teachers.
Teachers, right? Public servants, police officers, firefighters, servicemen and women who do things on our behalf. So we give them respect, but we give it to them on a high level. Honor. So my next question is, please raise your hand if you can answer yes to these two questions. One is, please raise your hand if you purchased a ticket or you passed a test that made you eligible to be born on this planet. Did you pass a test? Or did you purchase a ticket to get here? No. None of us did anything to bring ourselves here. We all accepted an invitation from our parents. I don't want to think about how that invitation came. It's disgusting. But we all accepted that invitation, and here we are, trying to figure out what it means to be. I never forget working with my high school students, and we did some service learning projects in a senior housing facility. And the thing that had never occurred to me or crossed my mind that was so profound was when one of the staff talked to our kids and taught our kids about how to be kind to elders and that kind of stuff, because many of them don't have grandparents that live close to them or don't visit with older adults. And she said, be kind to them because they've never been 90 before. That really struck me. Like, them being 90 is a new experience for them. So they're trying to figure out what that means. Just like I'm trying to figure out what it means to be 42. I've never been 42 before, so I'm trying to figure that out. Thank you, guys. So when we talk about being, we're all trying to figure out what it means to be who we are with the talents and the gifts that we have. And lastly, I looked for a definition for the word human and found something very interesting. That it has two definitions. One is a noun, being a biped, having opposable thumbs, a big brain, and a belly button. If you don't have a belly button, you should be concerned. And so it's a noun, but human is also an adjective. And what do adjectives do?
Describes.
They describe what?
Noun.
The noun, right? So adjectives describe the noun. So what are things that we teach our nieces and nephews, sons and daughters, grandchildren? What do we teach them about what it means to be human?
To err is human.
To err is human and?
To forgive is divine.
To forgive is divine. What else do we teach them about what it means to be human?
How to respect others.
All right? How to respect others. That's what we teach them.
How to walk, how to talk.
How to walk and how to talk.
I think we also teach them some bad things. About that we own the earth, or that we are here to rule it, or some things that can be misconstrued.
Okay.
Like
So
that.
we also teach them some bad things, right?
Right.
Anything else that we teach our young ones about what it means to be human?
Right from wrong.
We try to teach them right from wrong. We give them a moral compass, right? So they can make decisions based on that moral compass. And that moral compass is, for the most part, based on our culture and our environment and all those things, right? And so that's the most important. And so when I'm getting cut off by someone, maybe one of you, or maybe I'm cutting you off. One of the things that changed how I operated in the world was using this as my mantra, that I need to give dignity and honor to people just because they exist, not because they wear the right outfit or they look the right way or they have the right position, but because that's our inalienable right? The right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, which is in the preamble. And the Declaration of Independence. And so what I'd like for you to do is, keeping this in mind, I'd like for you to do an exercise. So on your in your handout, under the pictures of my family, you will see a grid. And it should look like that. It doesn't look like that. So we'll come back to that stuff later. Oh, there it is. Yes. Okay. So you should have a grid that looks like this, right under the pictures of my family. And across the top are categories of individuals, and then, or cultural categories that we've broken folks in. And I know that there could be more, but I only have so much physical space, right? And here we have groups that have tried to teach you about these groups, all right? So here is parents and family, friends or next, school and workplace, TV and movies, and personal experiences at the bottom. What I'd like for you to do is I want you to tell me what these folks over here tried to teach you about these folks over here. And I want you to do it in a particular kind of way. If you've learned something positive about one of these groups, I want you to put a plus. If you've learned something negative, I want you to put a minus. All right? If it was never anything you ever talked about, I want you to put a 0. All right? So a plus, a minus, or a 0. You can have pluses and minuses in the same box. All right? So I'll give you about 2 minutes to do that. All right? if you can stop right where you are, what I'd like for you to do is to get into, well, actually, we're a small enough group that if we can just create a little circle right here, and we can just talk about our pluses and minuses. What is bigotry? Have you heard that word before? Have you known a bigot or seen a bigot on television?
Bigot is somebody that says something or preaches something and then goes against exactly what they just said, that they don't believe in.
Okay, I might call that statement ironic. What she said was that a bigot is a person who says one thing and does something else, or they contradict themselves. I would say that person might be hypocritical, but they might not necessarily be a bigot. They could, in fact, be a bigot. But there's a special way that I'm looking for in terms of how we define it. Yes, ma'am.
Is that when someone thinks they're better than somebody else?
Okay, it could be that someone thinks that they're better than someone else.
For certain reasons.
For certain reasons. All right, that sounds like a pretty good way to think about that.
Big-headed.
That they might be big-headed. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
I hate everyone that's different than them.
They hate everyone that is different from them, right? So I am older than most of you in this room. And when I was growing up, there was a television show on called All in the Family. And All in the Family, so a number of other people remember that show too, right? So All in the Family featured or starred this guy named Archie Bunker. That was the character. The main character was Archie Bunker. And Archie Bunker, so you're nodding your head, so you know what I'm talking about. So can you describe Archie for some people who weren't able to see that show? What was he like?
He was just a really self-centered, grouchy old man.
He was self-centered, grouchy old man. What else?
Didn't care.
He didn't care about other people. What else?
He was detestable.
He was detestable.
No redeeming quality.
It didn't seem that he had any redeeming qualities, right? So he talked bad about everybody. He didn't use the politically correct terms to identify people, and he didn't care to because this was his world, right?
Al Bundy.
A lot like an Al Bundy, right? Now the interesting thing is, if you met a person like that in real life, is that someone you would want to hang out with? Probably not. But the thing that I find most interesting is that Archie Bunker, or Carol O'Connor, as the character of Archie Bunker, showed up in America's living rooms for over 15 years. This detestable person shows up in America's living rooms for over 15 years. With all the bad stuff that you guys just said about that person or bigots. He was known as America's favorite bigot. Why is it that show would have lasted for over 15 years?
Because he spoke the truth and truth hurts.
Because he spoke the truth and the truth hurts?
Because sometimes people find it amusing to watch somebody that's kind of ignorant, I guess.
Okay, so sometimes people find it amusing to watch people that are ignorant? Yes.
I was going to say that people felt good, well, I'm not like him.
People felt good and said, I'm not like him, right? So you guys are on the same page. So I did comedy, right? So I was in a comedy troupe, and we did improv comedy. And I took classes to learn how to do that kind of comedy. So you can take classes to be funny, right? And so one of the things they taught us in this class is that there are two reasons that people laugh at things. One is that we think that we're smarter or better than the thing that we're laughing at, or that the thing that we're laughing at is smarter than we are. Case in point, Gilligan's Island, right? So here we have the professor who is making solar panels out of coconuts, but he can't get people, he can't figure out how to make a boat to get off the island. Right? Just absolutely absurd, right? So he's really smart to the point that he's dumb, so we can laugh at him. And in Archie Bunker's case, we would laugh at him because most of us thought that we were smarter than him. Although I will also say that he also spoke the truth for some people. Some of the things that he said were people's truths at that time as we were changing and evolving in the United States. And I would propose to you that he was also a satirical character for us to look at ourselves as Americans, to see where we've come from, where we're going, to ask the kinds of questions. Is this the kind of person I want to be? And if not, what kind of person do I want to be? Right? So he was presented to us in that particular way. Now, the thing I thought also was very interesting about about Archie Bunker was that he had a son-in-law that would actually try to bring him real information, right? So Archie would say something crazy over here, and his son-in-law would say, "No, Arch, this is how it is for real." And he'd give him statistics or data about something. And what was Archie's response to that data, that information?
Sure, meathead.
"Shut up, meathead." He'd call him names. He'd try to embarrass him. He'd make fun of him. That information would go in one ear and out the other. It was like water off of a duck's back, right? So it just didn't stick. I don't know if you've had conversations with bigots before. I know that I have, and I've tried to bring them information, and guess what I found? The same thing happens. They can't hear me. And it's so funny because I'm a logical person, so I try to take them down this logical path. And then, they're like, "Well, that doesn't make sense because of this." And I'm like, "Well, what about this? And that doesn't make sense." And then finally they get to a point where they get so frustrated and they say, "Well, I don't even care what it says. This is how I feel. This is just me." Right? When people tell you stuff, listen. Because that helped me figure out how to work with bigots and bigotry. Because I thought that my talking at them, I thought that my giving them information was actually going to do some help, do some work, do some good. When in fact, it didn't. Until I figured out what does. So bigotry, and I want you to write this down somewhere. If you have space on something, just write down. Bigotry is an emotional state. So if I have a bigot in my life, they will not be moved by information. What will they be moved by? Emotions. And what is the most powerful emotion to help somebody move? Sounds hokey. Say it. Love. Think about yourself. When you were in love with someone, there are some things that you did that you wouldn't normally do because you were in love. Right? So bigotry is an emotional state. Prejudice. What is prejudice? How does one define prejudice? How do you define prejudice?
Judgmental.
To be judgmental. Prejudice.
It's not judgmental only, it's pre-judgmental.
It's pre-judgmental.
Before you know the person.
Before you know the person.
You've
assumed certain characteristics, certain plans. You've even mapped out your relationship with that person before you've really gotten to know them. Right? Is prejudice good or bad? It's what?
I think it depends.
It depends. It depends.
Seems to be more bad.
It seems to be more bad than good.
Yeah.
Okay? Cool. So I'm walking down the street. It's 11 o'clock at night. There are 5 guys walking towards me. What decision do I make? I cross the street. Why?
Because there's one of you and 5 of them.
It's one of me and it's 5 of them, and I have prejudged the situation. I have been prejudiced. And you would say in that context that was what kind of decision? A smart, a rash, a safe, a good decision. I saw 5 guys. I made that decision. I'm going to cross the street. And you would say that was a good decision in that context. The problem with prejudice and prejudiced people is that they take things out of context and try to apply it to every area of their life. And so it looks kind of like this, right? So in the context, crossing the street when 5 guys are approaching me makes sense. But now I'm in a different context and I'm at the Mall of America. I'm walking down the aisle. There are 5 guys approaching me. Using that same logic that I used on the street, what decision would I make?
Don't look him in the eyes. Different aisle.
I'm going to walk down a different aisle. I'm not going to look them in the eyes, right? So I'm going to change my direction. But the problem is, at the mall, what happens when I change direction? It's 5 more people over there. So now I'm going to turn around over here, and now what do I see? 5 other people. And so what prejudiced people don't remember, or they often forget, is that whatever decision they made in that context may have made sense. But you don't live your life by the exceptions. You live your life by the rules of law, right? And so, so prejudice is a thought. So bigotry is an emotional state. Prejudice is a thought, which means that discrimination is in fact what? An action, right? So we can measure that action. We have rules around what are appropriate actions and not appropriate actions. So what we have is a mathematical equation here. That bigotry plus prejudice equals discrimination. Okay? Now, what we've done as a society is we said we don't want any discrimination. So we're going to just beat discrimination out of people. So for example, I was in a training and a woman stands up and she says, Andre, I want to know why all the people of color are moving into my neighborhood. Mm-hmm. How do you think the audience responded? Yeah. They were like, oh. And why'd they go, oh?
Not something used to someone actually stepping up and saying it.
So they're not used to somebody actually stepping up and saying it. And what else? You're not supposed to say colored. Right? You're not supposed to say that in public. You say that around your friend. Anyway, right? But our society has trained us to say when we see that discrimination, don't say that. Bad person. I'm going to slap your hand anytime you do this. But the problem is that we end up creating something kind of like political correctness, right? Where people don't say the wrong thing because they don't want to get their hand slapped. But what hasn't changed about them? The way they think and the way they feel is still the same. And this is why this becomes important, right? So I know that you've been on a telephone call with someone, or a cell phone, or whatever, they're called now, and you're talking to them, and you know when they're smiling. Has that ever happened? You know that they're smiling. You're not seeing them. They're not close to you. But you know that they're smiling. You can act any kind of way that you want. But people know what's in your heart and what's in your thoughts. Just like they know if you're smiling on the phone. People try to say, well, I'm not like that, blah, blah, blah. And they say that in public. And we see what happens in their private lives. And they're a mess. They're a mess. Now, what I will submit to you is that we're all doing the best that we can. But it's not enough. We have to do more. So we'll talk more about that in just a second. Any comments, observations about these concepts? Does this make sense? Am I too far out there? What are your thoughts? So it makes sense? Okay. Cool. I didn't want to lose you. I don't want to lose your love. Don't want to lose your love.
Lost battery probably.
Jared, teach him that move.
Yeah. Don't take my moves. So here we go. So here are some truths about people. People can learn, change, and grow. who I am today is not who I was at 17, right? So thank God for that. I've adapted to the world. I've learned a lot of things. I can experience new things or old things in different ways. And so we can always learn, change, and grow. At any point we stop believing that about people, it's time for us to stop doing whatever it is that we're doing, right? So as teachers, this is what we know to be true, which is why we engage folks. All human behavior is goal-directed, which means that people do things because they're trying to get something, right? Working with kids.
Wow, sorry for the interruption. I needed a break.
Their hands slapped, but what hasn't changed about them? The way they think and the way they feel is still the same. And this is why this becomes important, right? So I know that you've been on a telephone call with someone, or a cell phone, or whatever they're called now, and you're talking to them, and you know when they're smiling. Has that ever happened? You know that they're smiling. You're not seeing them. They're not close to you. But you know that they're smiling. You can act any kind of way that you want. But people know what's in your heart and what's in your thoughts. Just like they know if you're smiling on the phone. People try to say, well, I'm not like that, blah, blah, blah. And they say that in public. And we see what happens in their private lives. And they're a mess. They're a mess. Now, what I will submit to you is that we're all doing the best that we can. But it's not enough. We have to do more. So we'll talk more about that in just a second. Any comments, observations about these concepts? Does this make sense? Am I too far out there? What are your thoughts? So it makes sense? Okay. Cool. I didn't want to lose you. I don't want to lose your love. Don't want to lose your love.
Lost battery power.
Jared, teach him that move.
Yeah. Don't take my moves.
It's all
So here we go. So here are some truths about people. People can learn, change, and grow. Who I am today is not who I was at 17, right? So thank God for that. I've adapted to the world. I've learned a lot of things. I can experience new things or old things in different ways. And so we can always learn, change, and grow. At any point we stop believing that about people, it's time for us to stop doing whatever it is that we're doing, right? So as teachers, this is what we know to be true, which is why we engage folks. All human behavior is goal-directed, which means that people do things because they're trying to get something, right? Working with kids. Anybody have little children in your life, right? Yeah. If you reward them for doing something, they're more likely to keep doing that or doing more of it, right? Because they're getting something out of it. So we're all trying to get something. People do what makes sense to them, even if what? It doesn't make sense to anybody else, right? So you and I understanding why they did stuff is not a prerequisite for them doing it, right? So people will do what makes sense to them, even if it doesn't make sense to you or I. And that attitude is a response to a goal. What is an attitude? What's an attitude?
Characteristic.
It's a characteristic, okay? Attitude.
It's a reaction to something.
It's a reaction to something. Attitude. Anybody been accused of having an attitude? Like, you got an attitude. Right? Yeah. So my parents would say that kind of stuff all the time. And my parents married young, and so they were going to college while I was growing up. And so they were trying all this stuff that they would get from their psychology classes. And so they would end up saying crazy stuff because they're trying to do this new way of behavior, and they have the way that they were raised, which was the opposite of that. And so they would get frustrated and say dumb stuff like this. My dad would say, "Boy, fix your face." So I'd be like, and then I get sent to my room, right? Or my parents would say, "Boy, go to your room till you learn how to act." So I go to my room, get my act together, and step out into the hallway. To be or not to be. And I spent more time in my room. Right? Because that's not what they were talking about in terms of getting myself together and changing my attitude. And I didn't get it until I was a little older. So my dad was my pastor. So I'm a preacher's kid. I grew up in the church. And on Sunday, we would go to church from 7:30 a.m. to 11:30 p.m. We'd stop at 3 o'clock for chicken, not because we're black, but because chicken is delicious. All right? So church all day on Sunday. Friday night, I asked my dad for the car, and because my dad loves me, what does he say?
No.
He says, yes, he loves me. Right? So I get the keys, I'm hanging out with my friends, I fill up the car with gas, I come home before curfew, I toss my dad the keys, and what does my dad say about my attitude? What does he say?
Better.
It's better?
Fill the tank.
Yeah, I did. I filled it up. I filled up the tank. I gave him the keys. I'm home before curfew. What does my dad say about my attitude?
Are you okay?
Do I have a good attitude or a bad attitude?
Good attitude.
I have a good attitude. And what do I say about my dad's attitude? That he's got a good attitude as well. Right? So I'm cool on Friday night and my dad's cool on Friday night. Sunday. My best friend Dexter calls me at noon and says, "Andre, can you pick me up for the movies?" What do I know about Sunday? Church all day. But I'm 17, I'm invincible, and Jesus is my friend. So I go up to my dad and say, "Dad, can I borrow the car?" And what does my dad say?
No.
He says no, right? And he gives me a lecture about how I'm leading people to hell. Right? Every negative consequence in my household, the ultimate consequence was that you were going to hell. You didn't make your bed, gone to hell. Didn't do the dishes, gone to hell. And they would either show you the way to hell or let you go on your own. Right? So my father denies me access to the car. So what do I say about my dad's attitude?
It's bad.
He's got a bad attitude. Consequently, what does he then say about my attitude?
It's bad.
That I have a bad attitude. But we were just cool on Friday night. What determines one's attitude?
If you get what you want.
If you get what you want. If you reach your goal, you have a good attitude. If you don't get what you want, if you don't reach your goal, you have a bad attitude. So, you have a friend, you have a coworker, you have someone that's in your study group, and they have a bad attitude. What do you know about them for sure? That what?
They want something that they're not getting.
There's something that they're not getting. There's a goal that they're not achieving. And so as a person who is trying to be helpful, you then have a two-part role, right? The easiest thing to help someone have a good attitude is to do what? Help them achieve their goal. Give them what they want. Power to the people. Give the people what they want. OJs. Oh, anybody OJs in the house? Right? So give people what they want is the easiest way to help them get a good attitude. But what if what they want is not something that they can do? It's not something they have resources for. It's not something that you can help them with. Then what becomes your responsibility as a helper? To what?
Help them change their goals.
To help them change their goal, right? Because if I give somebody my goal, what are they going to say about that? It's not going to work, right? It's not, I don't want to do that. It could be something they really want to do, but just because I said it, I'm like, I don't want to do that. That's not me, right? But if you help them figure out what their goal is, then they can change it. All right? Any questions so far? Okay. So, what is it that is the ultimate goal that human beings have? Right? So, no matter where you come from, you're trying to achieve these central things, these central goals. And what everyone is trying to strive for is significance, belonging, and safety. The slide before was Abraham's hierarchy of needs, and he has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They're boiled down here to 3 because this is Alfred Adler's approach to what human beings need, right? So we're always looking for significance. Significance says that my life has purpose. I'm not here by accident. There's something that I was put on this earth to do, and that is what significance is talking about. Belonging says, not only do I have purpose, but I do better with my purpose when I'm around people that I can share my purpose with, and that they can share their purpose with me. And safety says that I'm in an environment that will allow me to practice and to live and to develop my significance, right? So we're all looking for significance, safety, and belonging. Now here is where, again, we get confused or we get baffled by these illusions of differences, and we don't necessarily get to see these in people. So for example, there's this thought that that intelligence is on a bell curve throughout the planet. Right? So these scientists got together and they said, you know, this group is more intelligent than this group, and this group is more intelligent than that group, and this group is less intelligent, and all this kind of stuff. But anytime they do these experiments, I always find it interesting that the people doing the studies are always towards the top of whatever the good stuff is. Right? So it doesn't even matter what it is, but they're always close to the top. And so one of the things that I think is important is that we remember that this is what people are after, but how they get it is determined on where they came from and how they got to understand what this is. So, for example, if I took is anyone been on a farm or knows about farming at all? Okay, cool. What are some of the things that you need to know to be good on a farm? What are some things? What's that?
Milk a cow.
How to milk a cow. That's a helpful thing to know on a farm. What else? How to fix equipment. That's an important thing. What else?
How to operate heavy machinery.
How to operate heavy machinery. Those are important skills to learn. So that could be considered an intelligence, right? So that's a type of knowledge that is important to know on a farm. But what would happen if I took a farmer from greater Minnesota and I put him in downtown Manhattan?
They'd freak out.
They would freak out. What would the people in New York say about this farmer?
Not intelligent.
They would say he's not intelligent. What else would he say? Would they say? He's dumb. What else?
I said he's a hillbilly.
Oh, he's a hillbilly. He's what?
Useless.
He's useless. Those are all the things that they would say about this intelligent farmer in Minnesota. But now he's in downtown Manhattan and
He's lost.
he's lost, right? But what would happen if I took a person from downtown Manhattan and I put him on a farm in greater Minnesota?
They'd be all the same
Regular
thing.
Gucci heels.
They would be, what was that?
They cry when they're regular Gucci heels.
Yes, they cry when they wreck their Gucci heels. They might say the same thing, that this person's an idiot, blah, blah, blah. Well, and my granddad had an expression, what do you do with a dog that doesn't hunt? You shoot it. right? So when my grandfather's from, they would be shot, right? Because they're no good. Okay, all right. But are they less smart or more smart than the other? No.
Either or, they're just out of their element.
They're just out of their element. And so it always cracks me up when I hear people talk about, well, these immigrants need to learn the language. They need to speak the language. Immigrants speak, right? The thing I think is so funny is that most of our parents, our grandparents, our great-grandparents were immigrants. And English was not their first language. So I want you to just think about that. Because what people are trying to do is get significance, belonging, and safety. And where they come from allows them either greater access or they just need a little more time to figure out what it means to be here. All right? But we're all looking for significance, belonging, and safety. All right? So with that, what I'd like for you to do is there is a chart inside your handbook. Under the
Okay, Andre was telling the truth. I got it together. Let's get back to the lesson. Awesome.
I've never been able to think of it in that way, in the equation of this is what goes into it, and this is what comes out.
Yep.
People use those words interchangeably all the time.
Yep.
So it's nice to have them separated like that.
Yep.
Because if you can impact elements of an equation, you can change the outcome.
Oh, definitely.
So it is a new way of thinking about it, because prejudice just is, right? And it's what you do with it. And so to look at it in terms of the inputs.
Yeah. Because all too long, we've been trying to change this, right? So we've legalized stuff around this. We have enforcement around this stuff. But to be quite honest, this is a byproduct. This is a byproduct of these first two things, right? And so if we can stimulate people to recognize that we have similar circles. I mean, the things that you want in your life are exactly the same kinds of things I want in my life. Now, our approaches to that may in fact be different because of our culture, because of our geographic locations, so forth and so on. But ultimately, I want the same things you want. And, you know, when we all do better, right? Paul Wellstone. Other thoughts about this model? You don't have to have any other thoughts. I just wanted to give you the opportunity to talk about that some more. Yeah. For me, when I was able to discover this, or have the enlightening to kind of look at it in this particular way, it really did give me a hands-on way to really start figuring out how to solve problems, right? And so, you know, when we talk about bigotry, we talk about that emotional state, and that love is the only way to kind of really move somebody along that continuum. It flies in the face of everything that we've been taught about people who either don't agree with us or people who don't think like us, right? Because our rugged individualism in Western society says, if someone doesn't agree with you, cut them off, right? Or if they act inappropriate to where you want to go and your goals, cut them off. But if we look at this, if I want to help someone, particularly someone who's in my family, the worst thing I can do is cut them off. Where do sick people go to get healthy?
Hospital.
They go to a hospital. Why do they go to a hospital?
Because people are there who know how to treat them.
Because people know how to treat them. And typically those people are healthy. All things considered, right? I mean, they're relatively healthy. I don't see sick people going to other sick people saying, you got this cold, how do I get over it? Man, I got the same thing. Right? So when we talk about these bigots, the only way bigots get better is to be with better people. The only way to get prejudiced people to think differently is that we have to have people who are able to give them cognitive dissonance, right? Somebody who's able to stand up and say, where did you get those facts? How do you know that to be true, right? And all too often we like to preach and villainize these folks, and then we keep ending up with this, and we keep saying, well, why, after all of these years of doing this stuff, why are we still coming up with this? It's because we haven't dealt with these two, the first two. So, cool. Thank you. And so when we talk about the bigots and the prejudice, and even the people who are acting discriminatory, one of the things we have to remember is that they're all reaching for the same goals. We want the same goals. And we all want a sense of significance, belonging, and safety. That's what we want. Why do people come to this school? So that it can expand their ability to be significant, belonging, and have a sense of financial or cultural safety that a job provides you, right? And so if I have a Somali student who just came from a camp, right? Or lives in South Minneapolis, what does that student want? He wants significance, belonging, and safety. If I have a kid from Chicago, what does he want? He wants significance, belonging, and safety. If I have a kid from Greater Minnesota, from Bram, Minnesota, who comes into the school, what does he want? Significance, belonging, and safety. Where we typically have problems isn't what these goals are. We typically have problems because we don't understand how people are trying to get those things, or that the ways that they're trying to get them are inappropriate for our cultural setting or for our environment. And so we have to teach people with this understanding that what they're doing is what they, in some ways, know to do, right? So if you can open up your handout, and I'd like to point out to you the truths about human beings, right? So humans can learn, change, and grow, right? Who I was at 17 is not who I am today. Thank God, right? So we can learn, change, and grow. We can adapt to our environment. We can use new tools. So we're flexible in that way. People also do what they think works, even when what? It doesn't. Even when it doesn't work, they still do it because they think that it works, right? All human behavior is goal-directed. Everything that we do is because we're trying to achieve some kind of goal, or we think we're going to get some reward from doing it, right? So people come to class late because they think they're getting some kind of reward from doing that, right? So the thing that they were doing before class was more important than the thing that they were doing to get to class, right? So that's something that we have to also understand, because goal orientation allows us to actually be able to change or help people change their behavior, right? Next, attitude is a reaction to a goal. What have you been taught about what an attitude is? What is an attitude?
Mindset.
It's a mindset. Attitude.
The way you think or feel about something?
The way you think or feel about something is an attitude. Anyone been accused of having an attitude? Right? So my dad was my pastor, and so growing up I was a preacher's kid, right? And so we would on Sunday we would open up the church at 7:30 a.m. and we closed the church at 11:30 p.m. We'd stop at 3 o'clock for chicken, not because we were black, but because chicken is delicious. So all day church on Sunday. So Friday night, I asked my dad for the car. And because my dad loves me, what does he say?
No.
He says, yes, he loves me. Right? So he tosses me the keys. I'm hanging out with my friends. And I put gas in the car. And I come home before curfew. I toss my dad the keys. And he says that I have what kind of an attitude? What kind of attitude?
Great.
A great attitude. A good attitude, right? What do I say about my dad's attitude? That he has a good attitude. So I'm cool, my dad is cool. Friday night. Sunday at noon, my best friend Dexter calls me and says, Andre, can you pick me up for the movies? What do I know about Sundays? Church all day. But I'm 17 and I'm invincible. And Jesus is my friend. right? So I go up to my dad and I say, Dad, can I borrow the car? And what does my dad say? He says no. And not only does he say no, but he gives me a lecture about how I'm leading people to hell. Right? Every negative consequence in my house, the ultimate consequence was hell. You didn't make your bed, you're going to hell. You didn't wash the dishes, you're going to hell. And my parents were very happy to either show you the way or you could go on your own. Right? So I would say that my dad had what kind of an attitude? Because he did not let me use the car. I would say he had a bad attitude. What would he then say about my attitude? That I also had a bad attitude. But wait a minute, Friday night we were cool. Sunday, now we both have attitudes.
Just on Sunday, you don't have an attitude.
You said just on Sundays, right? So what's the difference? What happened? What's that?
We disagreed.
We disagreed with what?
Each other.
With each other. Now this, if you want to be effective with students, this is probably the most impactful statement that I can make the whole time that we're spending together, right? Because this will help you figure out every last student that you interact with. This is the golden key or silver bullet, as it would be, to let you into the minds of your students. The reason, okay, so here, I'll give you one example closer to home for you. Have you ever been in a situation where you were a teen yourself and you asked a parent for something and they denied you that something, right? Your typical response, at least the response that I've often seen, is this one. Right? All that kind of stuff. Sighing, hissing, booing. And then all of a sudden the parent gets this clairvoyant idea that, they just tap into the universe and into your desires. And they say, you know what, I'm thinking about that. No, go ahead and do it. And you're like, oh, thank you. Right? You start purring. You want to rub up next to them. And I love you. Right now, 2 seconds ago, you hated these people. Now you love them. Why? If you want to understand our students and you want to understand their attitudes, it's important to realize what their goals are. When I accomplish my goal, I have a good attitude. When I'm not able to reach my goal, I have a bad or negative attitude. And so you're sitting in your office, or you're trying to register a student, or you're trying to even get folks to sign up for school, and they have a bad attitude. What is the one thing that you know about them for sure?
Goals.
That what?
They have goals.
That they have goals? But if they have a bad attitude, what do I know?
You're not doing
They're not getting their goal. So as a person who is a helper to the student, I now have a twofold responsibility to them. What's the easiest thing for me to do to help them have a good attitude? Ask them what they want. I can ask, can I use the bathroom? Does that get me to the bathroom? No. So not asking them what they want.
Understanding their goals.
So I can understand. Oh, yes, I understand.
Give them what they want.
You got to have a good attitude. If they got a bad attitude, you got to have a good attitude towards them so they can embrace.
What determines an attitude?
That conflict of, am I going to get what I want?
Is it the conflict? If I get what I want, I have a good attitude. If I don't get what I want, I have a bad attitude. Following that logic, if I have a bad attitude and you want to get me a good attitude, then you need to get me what?
What you want.
What I want. So if you have a student who has a bad attitude, the best way to help them get a good attitude is to help them get their goal, help them reach their goal. Now, what if you have a student whose goal is so obtuse, we don't have the resources for that, they don't have the capacity to actually do it, and it's not something that's within the realm of possibilities, right? So a student comes here and says, I want to be an astrophysicist through your program. Is that going to happen? No, it's not going to happen. It's not possible. We don't have the resources for that, right? So then what becomes my responsibility to the student?
Explain why we can.
Okay, you can explain why, and now I'm still saying, but I want to. I want to do it. I can do it. And you're saying, I'm going to explain to you why, blah, 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 blah.
Options.
What about options?
Well, if you don't have it within you, then you let them know what their options are.
So that they can do what with that information?
Change their goal.
They change their goal, right? So if you have a student who is who has some ideas, some thoughts of things that they can't do themselves, it's easy as bureaucrats for us to say, nope, can't do it, check. And then the bad attitude that they had when they came is the same bad attitude that they left, except that the name for that bad attitude that they have is your last name, right? And so it's important to encourage people to make their own decisions. And so all we do is provide people information. So if you want to help someone and they have a bad attitude, first, get them what they want. And secondly, help them set new goals. My parents would say that all the time. They'd be like, boy, go to your room till you learn how to act. And I'd be in my room for a while, and then I'd step out and I'd say, to be or not to be. I spent a lot of time in my room. Right? That's not what they were talking about. What they
Now, Andre, that is how you end a session.